Another episode of Nintendo Switch Online Review Crew is done and uploaded, and I can finally get some rest. Wait, hang on. What's this? Did somebody leave a comment? Flaming Sword is saying that I skipped right over the March releases, including Genesis classics like Alien Soldier, Light Crusader, and Super Fantasy Zone. No, that can't be. There's no way that's true. I've been on top of this. I bet those came out in like some other region or something because, oh my god, I actually did ignore last month's Genesis uploads. How the hell did this happen? Okay. There's no reason to freak out. We'll just do a makeup episode and pretend that everything is fine. Nobody will even notice. Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's cue the music and dive in. Fans of obscure Genesis games rejoice because the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack has you covered. We recently saw the release of shoot-'em-up great Alien Soldier, treasure genre-bending Light Crusader, and the very trippy Super Fantasy Zone. That's cool, but are any of these games actually worth playing? In order to answer that question, I decided to flip through the pages of Electronic Gaming Monthly, Machines Sega, Next Generation, and more to see what critics said about these games when they first came out. Come, join me for another action-packed episode of the Nintendo Switch Online Review Crew. After the critical and financial success of Gunstar Heroes, you would think that Treasure would be more, treasured. After all, they were one of the most exciting new developers of the early 1990s. Unfortunately, when it came to Dynamite Headdy, Sega wasn't sure what to do with the stylish platformer. And to make things worse, they didn't even bother releasing Alien Soldier in the United States. Just about the only people who were able to actually play this run-and-gun classic were those who imported the game from Japan or subscribed to the short-lived Sega channel. As a result, there are actually a lot of Treasure fans who've never had a chance to experience this Genesis great, and that just shouldn't be the case for such a high-profile developer like this. Frustratingly, it wasn't just American gamers who were in the dark, but also critics. Much like Mega Man The Wily Wars and Golden Axe 3, no US-based magazine reviewed Alien Soldier. In order to even get a score, I had to go all the way to the United Kingdom, where Machines Sega gave it an 85% and said, "The pattern with Treasure is beginning to establish itself. Whatever it is, it has to be different. This time, the traditional format of the shoot-'em-up has been turned on its head. It's the bosses who take up the gameplay time, the minor buddies are relatively unimportant. They're all well-designed, challenging, and impressive to behold. That said, there is little of the technical experimentation seen in other Treasure games. But perversely, Alien Soldier ends up having more variety than other sprawling long-level blasters. Computer and video games also liked the game, but pushed back a little on what Mean Machine said. This is a well-worn genre, and there aren't many roads forward. Alien Soldier doesn't exactly build a new orbital motorway, but it does lead you down quite an interesting B-road. Basing play on boss fights isn't a new idea, but Alien Soldier does quite a tidy job at delivering the goods. Alien Soldier will take any budding sadist a lot of determination to complete. My only worry is that your bloodlust may dry and your interest shrivel into repetitive stress syndrome before you kill the final infernal boss. I don't know, that sounds more like a dare to me. I say, give Alien Soldier a download for yourself and see if you're up for the challenge. Hey, remember all that stuff I just said about Treasure? Well, here we go again with the famed developer's second game of 1995, Light Crusader. The good news is that Sega decided to actually release this on cartridge, something that they didn't do with what I would argue the more broadly accessible Alien Soldier. Based on the reviews though, the two games probably should have swapped release strategies, because Light Crusader was not as beloved by the critics as the last game, or most Treasure games for that matter. Next Generation magazine gave it a 3 out of 5 and summed it up this way. Treasure, the hot Japanese developer who brought you Dynamite Headdy, worked long and hard on Light Crusader in an attempt to finally make the definitive action role-playing game. The problem with this genre has always been that there isn't enough action for the action fans, and the RPG elements are too simplistic for RPG fans. One problem with the action elements is the perspective which the game is played on. The 3/4 overhead perspective means that you can only move the characters diagonally, which makes for control problems. In addition to these dilemmas, the puzzle elements are too simplistic and the storyline is quite shallow. When it came to Electronic Gaming Monthly, the scores were all over the place. Andrew gave it an 8 out of 10 and said that it's good to see another RPG on the Genesis. I just wish they would leave the voxel puzzle elements out of it. In sharp contrast is Scott's take, where he gave the game a 5 and asked this simple question: can anybody help me find the story? Maybe it's just a trend to not include a story in an RPG, but I think it's wrong. Light Crusader is a fine example of another battle lost in these final days of the 16-bit generation. The highest rating I could find came from Machines Sega, who gave the game an 80% and called Light Crusader stunning. LLC's closest comparisons are the old Ultimate games, and the simple puzzle each room offers a welcome breather from more complex RPGs. However, the push X to Y to achieve Z formula may not appeal to all, and whilst there's a greater mission, I somehow doubt Light Crusader's lasting appeal. Well, I guess you'll just have to test that for yourself when you download Light Crusader on the Switch. The final Nintendo Switch Online game that we're going to be talking about today may not be a lesser-known treasure title like the last two, but it is obscure, at least when it comes to American audiences. You see, when it came to releasing the Sunsoft-developed sequel Super Fantasy Zone, Sega opted to bypass the United States completely and focus entirely on Europe and Japan. As a result, there are a lot of longtime Genesis owners who have still never played this game, let alone even knew it existed. With no American release, we're once again forced to turn to the Brits to find out what critics thought of Super Fantasy Zone back in the day. With a 70%, Megatech gave Super Fantasy Zone the lowest score. They argued that even though the graphics are unusual, the action is pretty standard. It's playable enough, and on the whole, it's a polished product, but ultimately, it has no more thrills than any other Mega Drive shoot-'em-up. I suppose that if you were a fan of the Master System version, this is a game you should look for. The rest of you aren't missing much, though. The Sega Pro may have liked the game more than Megatech, but critic Damien Butt had a sense that Super Fantasy Zone was destined to be forgotten about. He liked the graphics, sound, and gameplay, but noted that his main criticism is that the sequel is too similar to the first. It's all good and fun for a few hours, but the appeal soon wears off, and you'll be left with a standard shoot-'em-up with pretty standard graphics. But this is not enough to keep it from falling into obscurity. Of the UK Megs that reviewed Fantasy Zone back in the day, Sega Force was the one that gave it the highest marks. Averaging a score of 90%, Chris concludes that Super Fantasy Zone floats like a butterfly and stings like a bee. Grab it for yourself and you'll see what I mean. And if you've got any sense, you're gonna grab it sooner than later. Guess you're just gonna have to grab it and see what he means. You know what to do. Hey, thanks for watching this belated episode of the Nintendo Switch Online Review Crew. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we have a whole playlist full of these episodes. We've been doing new episodes every single time Nintendo adds new games. Even if we totally miss an update and then have to loop back a month later. Now, here's the question I have for you. What company made the best 16-bit games? Was it Nintendo, Sega, Treasure, or I don't know, somebody crazy like THQ or Ocean? Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back next week with reviews and a lot more. If that sounds good to you, then I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,